What's going on, everyone? Jim O'Neill here, and hey, look it, we're not in my living room, we're not in the studio, we're not even at the pond behind the office. We are in a clam, and it's a perfect place to be. It's ice fishing season, everyone, and we're a month or two behind, but here we are on about 8-9 inches of ice. In fact, we're on the chain of lakes right now, Northern Illinois, giant body of water, and we're catching fish. I've already got a couple 14-inch crappie on the ice, guys. Love it. But it's not about fishing just today, it's about ice fishing in general. Last show, we went over safety and we went over fundamentals on how to ice fish. Well, now we're doing it. And I have one of my best ice fishing friends out today, Trevor Kroll of Wet and Wild Outfitters. He runs a huge organization. Has guides all over the Midwest, especially here in the Chicagoland area. But ice fishing is his thing. This man lives, breathes, dies ice fishing. Last year he had over 100 days on the ice. I think I had like 10, and I do this all the time. So he's gonna show us a few things today, and we're gonna catch some big fish. But let's recap last week, and then we'll get into that. And, we might be joined by one of the greatest ice fishermen of all time. So you guys better stay tuned, all right? So for this week, we got no records for you guys. So we're going to mosey on down the tournament trail. And our first tournament has already happened. We have already had a college national champion. And I have to say a huge congrats to our Midwest team that took first place, Adrian College out of Michigan. Congrats. Let's hear it for the boys. I want to hear it for Braylon and Lucas Washburn, who took the title, and they only took it by 1 ounce. They beat Campbellsville University by 1 ounce. If you guys have never been in a bass tournament, and I guess this applies to other tournaments as well, but 1 ounce wins. I mean, there's nothing more nail biting, It's incredible. It's incredible, that feeling, and to win a natty, any sport, right? Sports fan here. We obviously just had a college national football champ, but more importantly, guys and girls, we have a fishing champ. So again, congrats for winning the MLF championship, Adrian. You guys deserve it. I know that team is strong. I know there's a lot of support, a lot of active members, and you guys love fishing, so congrats. Now, speaking of Florida, that was on Lake Toho, by the way, the chain down there outside of Orlando. I took a trip down to Florida last week, and we got to catch some cool fish. We got to catch a snakehead. We caught some peacock bass, but what was really cool was the clown knife fish. It swims backwards and looks almost like an eel. Now, it's an invasive species, but some of the guides, some of the industry has taken advantage of catching them because they're known as an aquarium fish, as are a lot of these other fish that live down there. Mayan cichlids, Oscars, pacu, snakeheads, arowana, red-tailed cats. They all live in South Florida. They have the climate like the Amazon, so they just live and they breed and they flourish. So we got to take advantage of catching some of those, and I had tons of fun. It was the perfect way to spend the week between open water and safe ice. Now, we are on safe ice, and we took our safety precautions today, ice pick, spud bar, and all, but in fact, we have the ATV out here today because the ice is already 6, in some places, up to 10 inches thick, just 3 to 4 days after open water. Absolutely incredible. Now, guys, we're going to take it to a quick commercial break. But when I come back, we're going to join my buddy Trevor and talk a little bit about the beautiful Chain of Lakes, Illinois. And then, like I told you guys, we got a special guest coming, so stay tuned.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at MWOMag.com. That's MWOMag.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Hey, like I said, quick break. And look at this, magic. Trevor Kroll appears. What's up, Trevor?
What's going on, Jim?
So I was telling the peoples, we're here on the chain of lakes, Northern Illinois. What are we doing?
We're fishing. Actually, I think
What kind of fishing?
we're catching.
We're catching. And we're ice fishing, and we're catching. What are we catching so far today?
Oh man, what do we got? We got some walleye,
Yeah, caught a few walleye so far.
crappie.
Caught some big crappie.
I think you do a little farming today.
Yeah, we caught a sheep's head. You got a yellow bass.
I got some yellow bass. Chris got a couple yellow bass.
And then I lost that largie under the hole.
That largemouth.
So yeah, we've been catching some fish.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, in other states, right, of the Midwest or other parts of the country, try to explain the chain of lakes.
Very unique fishery.
Right.
Just a cool place. You're basically 60 miles out of Chicago, 60 miles outside of Milwaukee. So metropolitan lakes.
Yeah.
There's 14 different lakes that make up the system, and the Fox River actually flows through it.
It does. Trevor, you keep talking to the camera. Our guys just caught a big walleye. I got to get that walleye in here.
We got to go get it.
Oh, yeah, we got one. That's a big walleye again. Trevor, come here. You want
I'm
to pull
coming.
that deucer for me? Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Here we go. Holy smokes!
What? Listen, what happened here? Trevor, look at this. Look at that fatty.
Yeah, the chain of lakes, dude. I told you we'll go out for a little mixed bag action today.
Hey, unbelievable. Look at this beautiful fish here. Beautiful walleye, Illinois gold here. Do they normally grow like this on the chain?
They do. We actually have a really healthy walleye fishery here.
I mean, that fish looks like it's in March, ready to lay eggs, you know?
Yeah,
And we're here in middle of January.
they're eating good. One of the things that we do like about this system is that we do have the protected slot for those 18-inch fish, you know?
This protects that. Awesome. Let's get this pretty fish back in the water.
Yeah, let's do that because that's a slot fish. We want to protect those.
Well, sorry about that, Trevor. We had a little interruption there, you know. We had some walleye and people were doubling up and, you know, listen, we're just having an awesome time on the chain of lakes.
Yeah.
I don't want to make you stay here and talk too much, you know, but you talked about how this is such a diverse fishery. We talked about how we've caught tons of species and we didn't even get into them, you know? I mean, the chain of lakes, you can still catch smallmouth somewhere. You can still catch muskie. You can still catch pike. There's channel catfish.
We didn't even go on bluegill fishing yet.
We haven't even caught a bluegill.
And I am the bluegill guy out here if you talk to everybody around.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been known for years. I think a lot of people didn't even realize that I guided walleyes.
Because you're catching too many bluegill.
Some days that's how it goes.
It happens. Bluegill, you know, it's funny. Bluegill are like, they're the gateway drug fish. You're right. Everyone catches them as kids, and that's what starts the love for fishing.
Yeah.
And then it's like something reverses where all of a sudden you're an adult, but bluegill are like one of the coolest things to catch when you're ice fishing, especially when you see those dinner plates.
Those dinner plates, we both have been in some of those places where you get to catch some of those, you know. The chain of lakes itself has some really nice fish, especially the more southern lakes are really good bluegills.
Yeah.
Bluegill lakes. But yeah, today, man, that crappie fishing was pretty good there. Right in that bite window we talked about yesterday.
Anytime in Illinois, a lot of places in the Midwest, right? I think some of the Minnesota and Wisconsin they get a little spoiled. But anywhere in the Midwest where you're catching 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-inch crappie, awesome day.
All in one day.
All in one day. All in one day. So, Trev, I told you, we're not going to hold you back much longer. You can tell the peoples how they can check you out. You know, I know you guide more than just on the chain.
Yeah, we do a lot more than just a chain. We do some stuff up on Petenwell. We do a lot of work up in the Madison area. We just started doing some stuff in the Milwaukee area this winter, actually. We've been working up there a lot, breaking down lakes, learning how to fish up on the lakefront through the ice. You know, but the chain of lakes is still where we call home.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. There's a reason why it's it says Fox Chain Lakes and all of our stuff still, you know, because we don't forget where we came from.
Well, Trev, I'm going to be honest. You've made a believer out of me. You know, I've always said the chain. I try to stay away from it. I am a bass head, and you know how it does get crazy out here. I want people to know, right? It gets a little rambunctious out here in the summer.
Weekends get rowdy in the winter too.
Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, shoot, we started catching fish, and what? We got 20 people surrounding us now.
Yeah, as soon as you busted that camera out, they were ready to come check it out.
I know. It's my fault. You can blame me.
Check us out, www.wetandwildoutfitters.com. Or you can give us a call, 815-814-5155, or we have a really good presence in the Illinois fishing pages as well on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, hey, Trevor Kroll, everyone, his whole gang out here. We will have a TV show out of this. You'll see that next year.
And we also got to give a big shout out to my guys, Jay Shine, you're the man, and Mr. Walleye himself, Mr. Chris Lemerand, for helping us out today. They're going to be running some trips with us too this year.
Awesome.
So today was what a cool way to announce that.
Absolutely. This week's product review, we get to review a pretty cool product here. This is the Razor Auger Blade. They've been making blades and augers for decades, but now they're making them under their own name. Now, not only is it a nice orange, so you can see it from pretty much anywhere around, they're very lightweight, which I like a lot. If you're dragging around an auger all day, you want it to be light, you want it to be fast, you want the blades to be sharp. Right now, we got this set up on the brushless drill. It's awesome because you can just pull your work tools and go right to ice fishing. Have a little safety guard on here, but I'm gonna show you guys how easy, convenient, and nice this works. Brushless drill, handpiece, Razor auger. And just like that, you have a hole in 8 inches of ice. Pretty nice. And you can keep going and going. As you guys see, we have a minefield out here that we've been drilling with this auger. Now, I'm gonna take 2 minutes, make a quick change, and we'll show you what else it could do. Lickety split, just like that, we are back to the hand auger, how it comes. This is all available in the Scout Pack for $100. This is a perfect way to get into ice fishing, and even for the experienced angler, this is an awesome tool to have. So I'm just gonna show you guys real quick how sharp these blades are. And again, we're going through 8 inches of ice. Let's see how we do. Ready, set, go. A little bit of a workout, but hey, still very sharp, works like a fly. You can do a few holes throughout your day without tiring yourself out. Razor augers, guys, check them out at razorpower.com.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at MWOMag.com. That's MWOMag.com.
All right, everyone, the Devil's Lake prodigy, the guru out there, Jason Mitchell. Jason, what's going on?
You know, I'm just driving here right now. I have to go to a boat show here this weekend, but yeah, just leaving Devil's Lake here. So
it is the winter here in the Midwest, so that means two things. One, the love, ice fishing, and two, it is show season.
Yeah, yeah. This is the first boat show of the year for me, but yeah, I know we've been fishing on Devil's Lake quite a bit, and we've been fishing for quite a while. We've had good ice on Devil's Lake for quite a while. You know, that's been kind of the story, at least up until this recent cold snap, is that a lot of places don't have ice. So we've actually been kind of busy. There's a lot of people in town fishing just because Devil's Lake has good ice. I mean, I would say it depends on where you go. I mean, there's places where there's 15 inches of ice. There's places where there's less.
Yep.
There's places where there's a lot of pressure ridges this year that weren't healing up for a while, and now they're breaking open again. And so you got to be kind of careful around some of the pressure ridges. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a pretty good fight. We've had really good walleye fishing. I would say that's been probably the most consistent. But our perch fishing's been pretty good at times. It seems like ever since we got this really cold, windy weather, the perch fishing's been a lot more hit and miss, where they'll bite good one day, then 3 days later they bite somewhere else, but overall it's been a good winter.
Yeah, that's awesome. We love to hear you catching fish. As you can see right here, we had to pull off the ice for this interview. This is our first couple days in Illinois. We've had safe ice, so it's time to get to work, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you guys have ice down there. That's for sure. I didn't know if you guys were gonna get it or not there for a while.
Yeah, a lot of talk of the industry this year has been honestly a little downside because we haven't had a lot of ice, and the industry hurts a little bit when we don't have our seasons the way we're supposed to.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the industry definitely needed this cold snap, and I guess I'm optimistic. I feel like last few years, we've had these early winters and these tough winters, in the upper Midwest, where it was great for sales in November, maybe even October, but it came at a cost where by January, February, there's big parts of the Midwest where there was so much snow on the ice, and the conditions were so tough with slush, where if you didn't have tracks or snowmobile, it was really hard to get out on the ice. And if we can just get this cold snap now where people can just get out safely and get wheelhouses out, drive pickups out or four-wheelers and not need tracks, that could go a long ways towards the industry too, as far as just participation. We need to get people out fishing again, and this might be kind of a perfect winter if we just get some cold weather now without a lot of snow. Is kind of what I'm hoping. So.
Yeah, we are fortunate. We complain a little bit on the southern side of the Midwest because we didn't have any ice or snow, but then luckily that snow did come a few days before that cold snap, so that cold helped, cool off the water a little bit, but it wasn't on top of the ice. So now we have some really nice ice conditions with a nice little inch on top that makes it better for walking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you talked about the perch, and I think that's where we start because I know there's some incredible fishing in Devils of all different species, but let's be honest, it is world famous for those big, goofy fat perch.
Yeah, I know the perch are what made Devil's Lake famous, and it really is what gets people excited. And you look at on Devil's Lake, like last winter is probably one of the best winters that I can remember in at least 20-25 years. I mean, it was a phenomenal winter. And what really impressed me about last winter, looking back, was that there were so many big fish out on the main lake at East Bay, the main basins of Devil's Lake. Whereas, say 5 years ago, if somebody were to catch, say, a perch that was 2 pounds, I could almost guarantee it was north of Highway 2 up in the feeder lakes. That's where we seemed like that. Those are the areas where we were catching some of the bigger fish, but there weren't a lot of perch up there. But when you caught them, they were big. And now this past couple of years now, the number of big fish that we've seen on the main lake of Devil's Lake itself has been pretty impressive. And so, it's kind of the same story every year, really deep contour transitions coming off of the basin. A lot of times we are fishing and perch over deeper water. Not always, but usually that's where you're going to find the numbers of fish. Sometimes you'll find perch up shallow. And when you do, usually they're a lot easier to catch.
Yeah.
But as a rule of thumb, I don't think there's nearly as many fish up shallow, at least for perch. But when you find them, they're nice and they're easier to catch. But that can change. I mean, there's been times where we've got on some pretty good schools up shallow, and I remember even last winter, like up in Pelican, in March, I was on basically shallow sandbars and shallow points, walleye fishing, looking for walleyes and finding pretty good numbers of big perch up shallow up at Pelican last winter. And so far this year, I've caught a few fish shallow. There's a couple of bites over the Minnewacan Flats where the fish were shallow. I'm talking 5-6 feet, which is pretty shallow for finding perch on Devil's Lake. Yeah. And then I've caught some perch up in Pelican shallow. But for the most part, you look at the main lake, whether you're out in front of the casino or some other good areas. Creel Bay has been really good this winter off and on. The Woods Rutten Road over East Bay, Black Tiger at times, you're looking at, usually you're in water over 30 feet of water, sometimes deeper than 40 feet. And so that's kind of the general pattern on Devil's Lake, is those deep bays and transitions. And whereas the walleyes, a lot of times they're less than, there's walleyes that are deep too, obviously, but a lot of times we're finding walleyes less than 15 feet of water. They're more, if you go up on the shallow structure, a lot of times that's where you'll find, good numbers of walleyes, so kind of interesting how the lake lays out that way.
Speaking of them, because that's going to be the next fish we talk about, although we could do a full show just on those perch. The walleye, is it times a day, year round, or certain parts of the lake or certain parts of the season that you find that mixed in with the perch, or is it usually a separate hunt? No,
they mix up. I mean, a lot of times when you're finding walleyes or perch deep, you'll find walleyes running with them. And from my experiences, a lot of times when you do find the perch deep, like say you're on a perch bite 37 feet of water, you'll find what I would say smaller walleyes mixed in with them. Yep. And every once in a while you'll catch a really big fish. I can't tell you how many walleyes over the years I've caught that were over 9 pounds that were deep mixed in with those perch, and then also too, for whatever reason, the white bass often run deep, especially there's deep rocks, and so the white bass, they'll come through a little bit higher off the bottom. Usually they'll kind of come through in a column, and then the perch are usually fairly close to the bottom, as are the walleyes as well. But you'll find them mixed up sometimes. I mean, you'll find it's funny if you find perch shallow mixed in with walleyes, are usually big perch. Yeah. If you find walleyes mixed in with the perch deep, a lot of times they're smaller walleyes, but not always. You'll get those random big fish that are really big. So, and it's interesting because the perch, they're kind of notorious for being, really, they really need a touch of finesse. They're usually not overly aggressive. You have to use real small tungsten jigs. You're fishing real small presentations in deep water. A lot of times these fish come in, you almost have to dead stick and just hold it still and just wait for the tiniest bite. And that's kind of how these perch roll. But these perch are feeding on a lot of invertebrates, so these fish are eating a lot of freshwater shrimp. For example, these freshwater shrimp, they swim in a straight line. There's no evasive maneuver. It's not like they have eyes or they see you and they try to get away. They're the easiest thing in the world for a fish to eat or for a fish to catch. But I think what happens is that the perch get big on these freshwater shrimp. The walleyes grow fast on the freshwater shrimp, but I feel like because of the way the forage base is, the perch are usually anything but aggressive, whereas the walleyes are overly aggressive. Usually the walleyes can be really aggressive. I think it's just because they're eating these freshwater shrimp all the time, and they're just hoping for another meal, whether it's a fathead minnow or a young of the year white bass or a young of the year perch. And these walleyes have a tendency to be on the aggressive end of the spectrum. Not always, but as a rule of thumb. And so we're jigging a lot. We're using a lot of lures, a lot of glide baits, spoons, and a lot of times jigging can outproduce anything. A lot of times it's a fairly aggressive jigging at times. And what's neat about Devil's Lake is you look across the lake, there's going to be a lot of different patterns. Okay, there's going to be walleyes on deep rocks and 30 feet of water. There's going to be walleyes on cattail edges and 3 feet of water, but there are a lot of shallow walleye patterns on Devil's Lake throughout the winter. And, I'm talking less than 12 feet of water. And it depends on what part of the lake you're in. Like if you're on the stuff north of Highway 2, we call the feeder lakes, Lake Irving, Lake Alice, those are dish bowl lakes that feed into Devil's Lake where, you might have 6, 7, 8, 9 feet of water at the deepest right now out in the middle of those lakes. And in those lakes, the water is really stained and you can catch walleyes all day long in 3-4 feet of water. It's pretty incredible, and it's pretty exotic if you've never seen anything like that before, whereas if you get out like on the main lake, it's fairly clear this year. And so you look at like areas like say like Doc Hagen's or out in front of Old Mill Bay or out in front of Budweiser Bay, Knutson's Bay, Fort Totten, some of that shallow structure, you can see down 7-8 feet of water, and where that water is a lot clearer, it is definitely a pronounced morning and evening bite.
We have a Budweiser Bay too. It's when the fish aren't biting very well.
Yeah. Well, so back in the day, so a little bit of history on Devil's Lake. So back in the day, we had this bay, and the Jerome family, they had the beer distributor at Devil's Lake, the Budweiser distributor. They had a little red, they still have this little red cabin on the bay there. And so that's how we got the name Budweiser Bay. And then when the lake came up, there's a bay straight across from Budweiser. People say, well, what's the opposite of Budweiser? That must be Old Mill. So they named that Old Mill Bay. Well, then that flooded into a new bay, so they called that New Mill Bay. And at one time around the corner, there was another bay that people called Coors Light Bay, right? And I remember there was a farm there that got flooded, and their last name was Knutson. And so I remember on a lake map, I renamed it to Knutson Bay. It's stuck ever since, because I thought, golly, if every bay is named after some kind of a beer, people are going to think Devil's Lake's got a problem, And so a little bit of history on that. That's how all those names originated back in the day. So.
Well, I got one of my, we don't drink anymore, but one of my old favorite ones, Zombie Dust. If I catch a big giant pike, which could be our next species we talk about, maybe we name a bay Zombie. Yep. How about those?
Absolutely.
Pike? I mean, like I said, Devil's Lake is obviously famous from the giant perch, but I'll never forget, truly, this is a true fact, Jason, one of the first ice fishing shows I ever watched. You were in it, and I think there was a couple guys in it, and you guys were catching perch during the day, and then you went shallow, like into the trees, and we're talking 40, 42-inch, I mean, massive, thick pike.
Yeah, no, it's a tremendous pike fishery. And what's interesting is we don't have the numbers of pike that we used to. And the only thing that I can figure is, for so many years, ever since 1993, the lake was coming up 2, 3, 4, 5 feet a year. And it just kept coming up and coming up. And when the lake was really raising like that, the pike numbers were through the roof. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. If you were in a bay that was less than 10 feet of water, you can use, you use 4 tip-ups in North Dakota. By the time you put your 4th tip-up out, your first one's already up. I mean, it's just, it was amazing how high the pike densities were in Devil's Lake. Well, now in the last, maybe 3 or 4 years, it's like the lake has stabilized a little bit, and it's even dropped from its all-time high. And we don't have those high pike numbers that we once did. Now, we still have good pike fishing, but it's not what it was, at least for that 2 to 7 pound fish that was so abundant before. But I think that's why our perch numbers are so high right now. I think the pike have dipped a little bit, and I think the perch numbers are up. And but Devil's Lake is sneaky good for big pike. I mean, I think there's probably better places that you could go for, like, say, pike over 40 inches. Like Fort Peck comes to mind, Lake Sakakawea, Lake Hawaii. Those Missouri River reservoirs are dynamite for huge pike, as is Lake of the Woods. Red Lake produces some really big pike. But so there's places that might be better, but we catch a lot of pike over 40 inches on Devil's Lake, and we can target them specifically. And usually, like when I'm on the main lake and I'm setting up for big pike, because I like to fish for big pike, I do things a lot differently than when I'm just trying to catch numbers. Like if I'm trying to catch numbers of pike, you go up into the feeder lakes like Irving, back into some of the places at Pelican Lake, some of the newer water, and you're putting tip-ups in shallow, often less than 7 feet of water. And that's how you catch the big numbers of pike, but most of them are going to be, I would say, 2 to 7 pounds. And if you go out on the main lake or East Bay or East Devil's Lake and target some of that older parts of the lake and big pieces of structure that drop off into deep water, I feel like when we target big pike on some of those spots, a lot of times we'll average, a big fish a day at least, and so it's pretty good fishing. And it seems like in the spring and in the summer and the fall, I feel like a lot of these big pike are following white bass, because we don't have a pelagic bait fish at Devil's Lake. So these big, these 40-inch pike have to eat something. And so I think for most of the year, they're really tuned into the small white bass. But in the wintertime, those white bass have a tendency to winter in deep water, often suspending over deep around deep boulders is the spots that they really like come midwinter. And it seems like the pike don't like to do that. They like to be up on structure. And it seems like if I can find a big main lake reef or point that has a lot of small walleyes on it, if I set up tip ups there for big pike, I can usually get them. So it's pretty consistent, pretty good fishing for big pike, especially.
And do you fish those higher in the water column, mid water column? I mean, do you change it up kind of?
It varies. The deeper I am, the closer I am to the bottom, is a rule of thumb. If I'm in shallow, a lot of times I'll go halfway down. Like say if I'm in 10 feet of water and the water is really clear, I find that I can go halfway down the water column, and that's a nice place to be. If I'm say 20 feet, I might go 2-3 feet off the bottom. I don't like to lay them in the bottom, but I like to get them up off the bottom a little ways. But the big thing I think is, like, we use a lot of frozen smelt or herring. I like the frozen herring. I actually order it from the Puget Sound. And if you have fresh frozen bait that just when you drop in the water, it leaves a slick in the water where it's got a lot of smell on it, that's the whole key. We can't use suckers on Devil's Lake. That's just been a state-wide regulation for years. And so, but what I find is, I think the dead baits work as good or better than anything. Those big pike are scavengers. And so, just like say an 8-inch herring, or and smelt is okay too. It's just that I feel like the herring gets more bites overall. I feel like it's got more oil in it than the smell, but they both work fine.
Well, let me ask you, Jason, has anyone taught you, the South Wisconsin hack of putting a big old Johnsonville sausage on there, because they like those sausages.
They work really good. They do. My deal was, I hate to waste a good hot dog on a pike. I'd rather eat it. But the other thing though, is like when I was guiding all those years, if I would have just showed up in the morning with a pack of the cheapest hot dogs you could find at the grocery store, and if you're not getting a flag within an hour, everybody in the group's giving you the stink eye. And so I just play it safe, and not try to get too over the top, just because sometimes with guiding you have to play defense a little bit too, but it does work.
Yeah, it's that was a shocker for me when I was younger and learned that one for sure, but it does indeed work. So we talked about the big species in Devil's Lake. How does one that's coming out there for the first time, obviously we recommend, and we've talked about this before, hire a guide. Obviously it's there's so much water in some of these mecca spots, Red Lake, Mille Lacs, Devil's Lake of the Woods, even way, way bigger. I mean, it's just so much water. So obviously hire a guide, talk to an outfitter, a resort. But if they're adventurous, if they have years on the ice and they don't want to take that as an answer, how do you start to break down Devil's Lake?
It's a lot of ice, and it can definitely be intimidating when you look at the entirety of Devil's Lake. When you look at all the water north of Highway 2, and you look at even like Stump Lake that's connected to Devil's Lake, you're dealing with, goodness, almost 200,000 acres of water. And what I always tell people, because I don't know of every bite going on in the lake every day. I mean, there's so much out there. Just pick an area and fish it. The thing about the lake is that there's always some fish in 6 Mile Bay. There's always some fish on the main lake. There's always fish in the Minnewacan Flats. Now, for whatever reason, some areas just fire up better some days. Some areas fire up better some years, and we don't know why. I mean, it's funny. Like some years, East Bay will just be hot all winter, and the main lake will be just quiet. It's like, you try it a few times and can't get on them, and so you just go back to what works, and then the next year, all of a sudden, the bay that was quiet the winter before fires up, and then the fish are 12, 13 inches long. It's like, well, they were there last year. Where were they? And so it's funny how different areas of the lake will fire up for one winter or the next. So you can definitely check with bait shops. Now, they're not going to know everything. I mean, they're getting up at 5 every morning to scoop minnows and run the till, and they don't get to be out on the ice every day, and they're talking to fishermen every day. But I guarantee you this, though, too. I mean, the reality is that if you go out there for, say, 2 or 3 days and you're busting your butt, drilling holes, and you're moving and it's cold, and you just put this tremendous amount of work in, and you finally get on a really good school of perch, you're just not going to run to the bait shop to tell them, right? That's just the reality of it. And so, the bait shops are going to tell you what they know, and it's going to be helpful, and they're going to help you as much as they can. But you got to take it for what it is. It's usually older information. It's where they were biting, but that can kind of direct you to where they're going to bite today or tomorrow. And so definitely get information from bait shops. Even online resources, Facebook forums, whatever you can, just to get an idea, and then just pick an area and fish it. And in a week you can't fish the whole lake. I mean, I've been fishing it most of my life, and I haven't fished the whole lake. I mean, there's a lot of spots to learn. I mean, I'm always trying to learn new spots every year. But say if you go out one day and you focus on the main lake down by Cactus Point and Bird Island and Fort Todd, you just spend the whole day down in that area. You try some things for walleyes, you try some things for perch, and what do you end up with at the end of the day? They figure, well, I think there might be something better. That maybe you go to East Bay the next day, and you spend the whole day, fishing through Black Tiger Bay. But just pick an area and fish it. Don't get caught up with the rest of the lake is the best advice I can give you, because a lot of times, there'll be people that catch them in Black Tiger. There'll be people that catch them in the south end of East Devils Lake. There'll be people that are on the north end of Krill, and there's different things happening every day, but you just have to just go out and you have to put in some work. Devil's Lake isn't for everybody, at least if you're just going out there on your own. A lot of people do go out on their own and they have great success, but they're fish heads and they work hard at it. They don't give up. They don't take no for an answer, because there's going to be days that kick your butt. There's going to be days that just, you try a lot of things that don't work, and then you have to suit up the next day and go after it again, and you just keep going after it till you run out of time for your trip zone, but you have to approach Devil's Lake with that type of mentality.
So we're scouting out here today in the chain of lakes, and there are perch out here. Our main fish we're looking for today is crappie. I fish perch all over, right? I fish perch in the Great Lakes. They're one of my absolute favorite fish to catch in the world. I fish them in our inland bodies. I fish them up in Little Sturgeon Bay through the ice. That's my favorite place probably to catch them, through the ice in the Midwest, but I haven't been over by you guys yet. So how do those perch feed? Because in Little Sturgeon, they come in waves, right? You'll hit them for a little bit, and the second you take all those baits out of the water, they're gone. It's imperative that you leave a bait in the water while they're biting. But then other places, where they're a shallow feeding perch, you kind of stay on them like a bluegill. If you mark them, you kind of find them, and they're there. Whether they bite or not, that's another story. Does it go in waves? Do they roam a lot in Devils? Does it depend if you're shallow or deep? How does that usually go?
These fish are usually moving. A lot of times they're coming through in small packs. I would say on average, they're coming through where there might be, say, 3 to a dozen fish in a pack. And you can see that with using forward-facing sonar. A lot of times they're coming through on the bottom, but every once in a while you'll get on schools where you might have, say, 3, 4, 5 feet of fish. On Devil's Lake, I always talk about if you can change the shape of the school, and since a lot of times these fish come through, they're swimming side by side, and that distance might vary. I think they like to swim at a distance where they can see each other. They're a schooling fish, but if you can get them to stack one on top of another, they bite a lot better. And so a lot of times you try to change the shape of the school. You try to change it where they're side by side. You try to change it where they're on top of each other. If you can lift them up off the bottom, that's a big thing. And a lot of times it's not so much keeping them around, it's trying to pull the next school in, because a lot of times, we're in deep water, and so, say you reel up a fish 35 feet of water, by the time you get back down, even if you have people fishing and they're reeling one up, it's easy to lose a school of fish when they're that deep, and so you just have to be on what I call being in the flow of fish, in the sense that, say you're on a contour and there's a lot of fish in the area, and there, like you might have a massive area that has several, who knows, maybe thousands of fish. You don't know how many are down there. I mean, sometimes with forward-facing sonar, you realize there's probably not as many as what you once thought, Right. But you're in an area where you've got fish coming through, and if you can get a new wave of fish come through, like a really good bite would be every 10 minutes. Well, then you'd be practically catching fish nonstop. But even if you get a wave of fish come through, like say 2-3 times an hour, that will usually end up being good fish. Like you're going to have you're going to have an impressive bucket of perch at the end of the day. And, you're just kind of, it's almost like I sometimes compare it to like being a deer hunter. You're sitting in a tree stand, and you got deer walking by on the trail. You got to be on that trail. And so when you're on a good bite, a lot of times you can't sit and just let those fish run underneath you. Like you're running traffic. But sometimes if the fish aren't moving, then you have to just grit it out and just make a lot of small moves and hop hole to hole, and try to catch them that way. So it just kind of depends on what you're seeing. But if the fish are moving, which a lot of times they are, then you can sit in an area and pick away at them. And sometimes just sitting, I've seen it many, many times where if you just sit in a hole like that and make everyone count, you'll a lot of times end up with more fish than somebody that's maybe a little bit impatient that just can't settle down, and they're just going from hole to hole to hole because they're spending a lot of time with their line out of the water. And so there's time and place for both. But on Devil's Lake, when you're in it, a lot of times you're better off just hunkering down and just waiting for those. A lot of times they're just small little groups of fish come through, 3 to maybe 8, 9, 10 fish, maybe a dozen fish. And sometimes too, what happens is, especially in that deep waters, there'll be times of the day where you're marking fish and they follow you up, they follow you down, and it's just like pulling your hair out and trying to get one to bite. But you might get maybe 1, 2, 3 fish an hour, which doesn't sound great, right? But you got to remember too that in a lot of cases these might be, they're jumbos, they're nice fish, but you're pulling your hair out, then all of a sudden that sun gets at a certain angle, and it's like these fish can see a little better and they fire up a little bit, where you're pulling your hair out for big parts of the day, catching 1 to 3 fish an hour, and then you get 1 hour or a half hour where you catch 10, and it's like, where every fish comes through for a window of time where every one of them bites, every one of them wants to eat, then the rest of the day you're back to pulling your hair out. And so there's windows on Devil's Lake too that you have to be aware of in that deep water. And I think it's a light penetration thing myself.
Well, Jason, before I let you go here, can we hit tackle and bait real quick?
I know a lot of ice anglers don't like braided line. It has kind of maybe a misconception, or that it freezes and whatever. And I think what happened is some of the earliest like spider wire and some of that does absorb a lot of water. 8-strand braids, 10-strand braids that absorb a lot of water aren't very practical for ice fishing. But you look at some of the new fuse braids, like Clam's got a frost braid. It's just 4-strand, and it's really a tight weave where it sheds the water pretty good. And in that deep water, when you're like in 30 feet or deeper, especially, that braided line gives you a big edge, not just for detecting the bite for sure, but also for setting the hook. You're going to lose a lot of fish on mono because it stretches so much. I mean, you get way up to the top of your hook set, you're still not there, Right. And so braided line, I'm talking like a 6 or 8 pound braid, which you're looking at a real thin diameter. And in that deeper water, I find that these fish aren't line shy. Sometimes I'll take a Sharpie and I'll just take a marker and make that bottom 2 or 3 feet black, and it seems like it blends in better. But you don't need a fluorocarbon leader below the braid in that deeper water at all.
Straight braid.
Yes, straight braid. In that deeper water, it doesn't matter. And it just, I feel like if sometimes you put mono or fluorocarbon on the bottom of it, you lose some of that sensitivity. And then just like Clam's got a Drop XL jig that's got an extra large hook on it. That extra large hook, I think, is important with perch because they do have a big mouth. A lot of times we're using wax worms, maybe a minnow head or spikes, on a say a number 4 XL. And then dropper chains are really popular on Devil's Lake. Just a small rattle spoon and then just a dropper, or even like the Haley's, the Haley chain. That stuff is really popular on Devil's Lake. Small spoons are really popular. Pinheads, some people use, the smallest size forage minnow or buckshot rattle spoon. Clam's got what's called a rattle and pea teaspoon in the smallest size, but you want to get real small with your spoons. And or the tungsten jigs are probably by far the most popular things for the perch. And you know what? There's days where a dead stick, just the tiniest fathead minnow you can find on a plain hook, pinned 4 inches off the bottom, 6 inches off the bottom. There's days where that'll catch fish when nothing else will. On the really tough bites. Sure. As far as the walleyes, a lot of glide baits, Tika minnows, jig and wraps, rattle spoons. I would say things that are maybe a 1/4 ounce would be an average size. and tipped with a minnow head or a full minnow.
Hey, that gets my juices going. I'm really excited. We're finally coming next year, a whole year to wait, but I'm excited to get out there and catch some of those big fish. I know some of our guys are headed out to Huron, Dakota next week, so they'll be out in your area.
Yeah.
But
That's a good area too.
Well, hey, Jason, not only thank you for coming on today, but thanks for everything you've done for the industry. We got a few guys here at the Oak Park Lounge that are fans. They're saying, hey.
All right. We appreciate you.
Jason, I love you, buddy.
We love you. Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. And if anyone wants to check out your social media or see what you're doing, where should they look?
Just probably on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. Just search Jason Mitchell Outdoors and we'll come up.
Well, hey, Jason, have a safe ice season and can't wait to see all those big fish you're posting this year.
All right. Thank you, bud.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
When I go ice fishing, especially first ice, safety is priority in my eyes. One device that I like to carry with me that I don't see a lot of people use is a simple set of spikes. These can be easily made. You don't have to buy them. You can just take a couple screwdrivers, tie a rope through both ends of it like that, wrap them around your neck. That way, if you do go in, they're right here. As you go in, you can grab them, claw the ice, and use them as a ladder to climb yourself up onto the safe ice and get out of the ice safely. I have family at home. I never leave these in the truck when I go ice fishing, especially first ice. I'm Jason Shine, and that's your Midwest Outdoors tip.
We caught big fish today on the ice. We learned a little bit about the chain of lakes in Illinois, and we got to talk to Jason Mitchell, arguably one of the greatest ice fishermen of all time. We want to thank, of course, everyone from Wet n Wild Outfitters that put all this together, gave me a beautiful podcast studio, and put us on the fish. Want to thank Jason Mitchell for taking time out of his day. The man's so busy, Jason, be safe. We don't commend talking and driving, everyone, but he's a pro, hands-free, eyes on the road, perfect. So guys, that's about it. Now, if you want to catch it live, you can the next couple weeks. We have some fun stuff coming on. This weekend, we have the Chicagoland Muskie Show. I'll be there Friday through Sunday. That is out in St. Charles, Illinois. So give that a look up. It's in the county fairgrounds. And then next weekend, we have a big show. We'll actually be recording a podcast there, and that is at the Schaumburg Show, which is the Chicagoland Fishing, Outdoor, and Travel Show. So come and see us. I'll be speaking Thursday night at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 3 p.m. I can't wait to see you guys there. And we have another awesome episode coming up in a couple weeks. Till then, guys, tight lines, and we will see you on the ice.